You are listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 310.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love Podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. How is everybody doing today? Welcome to the middle of August. As always, excited to be here with you today. And I want to thank those of you who are tuning in. Welcome anyone who is new to the show. And just a couple of announcements before we dive into our interview today with John Kanell. First of all, I am going to be teaching a 12-week Cookbooks on KDP course starting at the beginning of September. Cookbooks on KDP is my live course where I teach week by week cooks and bakers how to publish their recipes and stories in a book on Amazon. So more information is going to be coming about that. But if you would like to self-publish your recipes in a book before Christmas, before the winter holiday season, join the waitlist. And the link is in the show notes. It's www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/KDP. And something I've been thinking about is we have a lot of energy in a year, usually at the beginning of the year. And the first quarter tends to be very productive. We're focused on our health. We're focused on exercise. Maybe we focus on a goal that we have. And my students that took Cookbooks on KDP from March through June, we had several books that were published, and they harnessed that energy and used it to publish their books. But sometimes in September, October, November, we think, well, what are we going to do? What do I need to rush to do before the end of the year? We start thinking about fall. We start thinking about Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas and the winter holidays in particular. If you're a cook or a baker, you know, these are big time food holidays. But we don't always accomplish any big goal during this fourth quarter of the year. So I want to encourage you to think about investing your time over the next 12 to 14 weeks to publish recipes that you already have written and ready to go in a book for your clients, for your customers, for your family, or for a broader audience. And I can teach you exactly how to do that in Cookbooks on KDP. I'm going to talk more about that next week. But please sign up for the wait list so you can hear about the program when the doors open, and maybe a special bonus for those of you that are early birds that join the program. Okay, the second thing is today I'm getting ready to been teaching inside my traditional publishing program all about the get paid to get published method that I teach for my students who want to retain an agent or a publisher for their cookbook. And today, inside Get Paid to Get Published, which is my program, we're going to talk about cookbook proposals. Cookbook proposal being a tool that you write containing information about the book that you want to write, and you send that to your agent or a publisher to get a book contract, a traditional publishing contract. So very excited about that. This is the end of the Get Paid to Get Published Accelerator that I've been teaching every week that we meet, teaching a new topic, new insights about different things that I teach in the program, including building your platform, creating a concept for your cookbook, writing your proposal. And then next week, we're going to finish the accelerator with pitching a publisher. So that's inside my traditional publishing program. So for those of you that are new to the program, that's what I do in my business. I not only write cookbooks myself, but I teach you how to publish your recipes in a self-published book or how to get a traditional publishing contract through retaining an agent or a publisher. And of course, on the show here, talk to a lot of different cookbook authors about their new books, what's in their new books. I often talk to them about some things related to their routines or their habits around building a platform, building a brand, what kind of things they did to get a publishing contract, what their secrets are when it comes to balancing creating content and raising a family. So a lot of things that are interesting in that regard. I'll also be sharing some information with you in a few weeks about hybrid publishing, which is a different kind of publishing model, which there's a lot of really beautiful books that are hybrid published. Got a lot of other fun interviews coming up this year, some great cookbooks that are coming out, and just full of cookbooks and cookbook information for you. So today is no exception. This interview I had today was a lot of fun. I'm excited to present you an interview that I had with John Kanell. John is a former middle school math and science teacher who has a knack for breaking down complicated problems. And in 2015, he turned his attention to the kitchen and began creating content that empowers and inspires home cooks with the founding of his brand, Preppy Kitchen. Preppy Kitchen is now a nationally known cooking and baking destination where John uses his decades of homegrown experience to provide his fans with the knowledge and resources that they need to create indelible recipes. For our interview today, John and I talk all about his new book, which will be newly released next week. If you're listening in the middle of August, the book comes out, I believe it's August the 20th. If you're listening on the day this is released, you can pre-order the book, but it will be available for live purchase next week. The book is called Preppy Kitchen Super Easy, which features John's way of creating simple, everyday dishes that feel special. We have a great conversation talking all about his secrets for everyday recipes using riffs and swaps and variations, his make-ahead tips, and all of his secrets for one-pot and sheet pan meals that are perfect for busy families who want to have meals with a touch of elegance. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Preppy Kitchen's John Kanell. Hi, John. Welcome to the Cookbook Love podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Aggie.
Yeah, it's exciting that you're here. Before we get started talking about your second book that's going to be coming out next week, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is John Kanell, and I'm a former math and science teacher who pivoted over to teaching people about how they can make food at home. And my blog and the cookbooks are all called Preppy Kitchen.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that you taught math and science. What grade level did you teach?
I taught 6, 7, and 8, which I regarded as the golden years, but other people disagree very strongly with me. So I think middle school teachers are made to be middle school teachers, and elementary and high school teachers are in their buckets for a reason.
Yeah. Difference between 6th and 8th graders, though, huh?
Oh my gosh, yeah. 6th grader will call you mom, and
yes.
an 8th grader cracking jokes.
They're so sweet at that age. And of course, you have children of your own. I think it's always fascinating to watch them go through all these stages and see if, as teachers, we really agree once we send our own kids through that stage. But, being a math and science teacher and talking about cooking, it's all totally connected, in my opinion. And I love that you have used those skills now to help home cooks break down these processes and recipes so that it's more easy for them to do at home. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your work at the Preppy Kitchen and how you got your start, and then a little bit about your first book before we actually dive into talking about the second book.
Oh, sure. Well, I started off many years ago just sharing recipes that I really liked, and it was a real trial by fire. So for everyone who's thinking about going into social media and starting to put this stuff out there, you cannot wait until your end product is perfect. Mine looked extremely rough,
right,
and you learn by failing. So, oh, this cake was delicious. People can't taste the cake. They have to see it. So you have work on food styling, on photography and lighting, and the list goes on, and copy editing and all the rest of it. So it's a very stimulating and interesting task because there's always something to learn. So I started off and I was just sharing little videos that were snippets, and people were asking for the recipes. So I started a blog to share the recipes. And then I had more in-depth questions And I love talking about food. So I started a YouTube channel where I could give it, point by point, how do you make this recipe? What goes wrong? What am I going to do wrong? And can it be fixed? How can we save this? And just all the little interesting tidbits that make cooking so fun.
Yeah. Where did you start sharing your videos first? Was it on YouTube or was it another channel?
It was on Instagram. And then,
Instagram. Wow. And then the blog came after that because people wanted the recipes.
Mhm.
And then the YouTube channel came after that.
Yeah.
Now a much bigger ecosystem. And I think you make such an important point. We can't perfect things before we start. It doesn't, it'll never start. I
It's the
promise it
same.
will not work.
It's the same with getting into the kitchen for anyone who's reluctant to start.
Yes.
You
Yes.
can't, you know, expect your first thing you make to be perfect and hassle-free.
Yeah.
You can be more hassle-free if you have your pantry set up and you have your tools at hand and you read the recipe all the way through. But there will be issues, and it's really just about doing your best and making a go of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the book fell in then after the YouTube channel started. Your first book came out. And
Just
this
2 years ago.
second book, Preppy Kitchen Super Easy, tell us a little bit about the two books and like the differences. If someone is looking to maybe buy this book or, maybe even the first one if they don't have it.
Yeah, so the first book was organized by the season, and it was really inspired by our move to Connecticut because my husband and I grew up in Los Angeles, where it's really always 72 and sunny. It's not a joke. The leaves will change sometime in March. It's like
Yeah.
plants don't know what to do. We moved to Connecticut, and the seasons were so important in shaping every bit of your life, from how you dress to how you feel to like how do I want to eat. So like in the winter I wanted cozy, nesting, richer, more aromatic foods. In the summer it was lighter and brighter, taking advantage of all the local produce we have and the stuff that I grew in my kitchen garden, lots of grilling. And I wanted to have a book that kind of honored that and talked about like the journey.
Yeah.
So it was full with many special recipes, and I I love that book. I can't. It was a dream come true. And I met people on the book tour, and I started getting requests for various recipes. And a lot of the recipes I'd already put out, like on the blog or on my YouTube channel. And the first book was all new recipes. So it was like things I kept in my little hope chest that were very special to me and that I worked on. And I thought about like revisiting some of like the fan favorite recipes and things that people just love, like, really good chicken one pot dinner, pancakes, chocolate cake, chocolate chip cookies. And how could I make that special? And what was happening at the same time was my boys were getting older. I have twin 7-year-old boys now. And my business was getting busier, and like life just gets more and more hectic. And by the end of the day, I've been saying, you're hanging by your fingernails, trying to get to the end of the day. And yet the biggest task is like getting dinner on the table.
Yeah.
And that can happen at any time of day, by the way. Sometimes we wake up hanging by our fingernails.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a book that was realistic. So Preppy Kitchen Super Easy came about because everyone's so busy. You still want to make delicious things, but you don't want to be frustrated and anxious and harried in the kitchen. You want to get that done with so you have more time for the moments that matter. For me, it's spending time with my family in a relaxed setting or enjoying the meal itself.
Yeah. And I think what you're experiencing too, then if you have 7-year-olds, is not just the 4 seasons, but the season of school year and school things on top of this 4 seasons. And that's a whole season in itself. And then, the ages of the kids and what they want to eat and what activities they're involved in. So you're right. I mean, you're really talking to people who are in the midst of the very thing that you are living yourself, which I think makes your cookbook very authentic in that way, because you're trying to do the same thing in your home that we're trying to do in ours. And
I make food for a living, and I'm still
100%. Yeah.
Everyone struggles. And
right.
I wanted to have recipes that were streamlined, that you didn't have to go hunting around for superfluous ingredients. So I took a lot of the recipes, saw, well, how can we make do with less and also streamline the procedure and make sure that they're foolproof. So it was like, there were a couple boxes every recipe had to tick. It had to be delicious, had to be easy, had to have had to work every single time. And it couldn't be like, going to the supermarket for 5 hours to source everything out. I wanted to have like pantry staples for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And the book starts off with a pantry of convenience. So it seems almost silly, but like just having the correct things on hand and also knowing what they do is so important. And I do a lot of baking. I do a lot of cooking. So like my spice drawer is filled with my favorites. I always have, flour and butter and milk on hand to make a roux because that's like my go-to. Like, okay, got to get dinner on the table. I'm gonna make a roux and then like start and season it from there. And I wanted people to know like how can I brown butter? Because like just having browned butter in your fridge is a meal maker that can like take the most ho-hum thing, sweet or savory, and elevate it to like, oh, this is nice. What did you do? Which is a nice feeling to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Give us some examples of maybe some other things other than brown butter that you think really, like you said, make these simple dishes special.
But like having a salad dressing that you prepped like over the weekend, like make a big batch of it. I like to make a couple. And like my Greek everything dressing, I put on all my blanched veggies, and that's like my favorite. You could have like a creamy feta dressing, like you could have a ranch, you have tzatziki, and these things last. And for the picky eaters who are like, oh, I don't want broccoli, but you wanted to have a vegetable side, there you go. Or like for me, one of my struggles is like I have my protein, my starch, and a vegetable. Like, okay, I'm tired, I'm calling it a day. But what about the salad?
Yeah.
Some people might want a salad. And like if you have the dressing at hand, it's so much more achievable to make whatever kind of salad you want. Like it could be a rice salad. Like I have a summer rice salad in the book that I love. One of the pantry staples is having pickled onions. I put pickled onions on everything. I love sour things. So just having like some pickled red onions hanging out, they're so easy to make. It's great in salads. It's great on veggies. I'll chop it up and put it on proteins too. And I just love the brightness that it gives and a little pop of color too.
Yeah. And you dedicate a whole chapter to these things bechamel sauce, which having a white sauce on hand,
Yeah.
your dressings. Let's see here. Pesto, having pesto by the batch. Yes.
I mean, I was inspired because I went to a friend's house and it was one of those things where the kids kind of just coalesce to one house and the parents come too, and all of a sudden my friend had to host a dinner. And she was so easy breezy about it. She made a giant batch of spaghetti. She had made a huge batch of pesto that she had on hand, and then a big salad. And I actually brought a dessert to this. Everyone was so happy. It was just like, oh, and it was so simple. A lot of times people will really kill themselves over like going the extra mile when they have people over, and you are miserable as a host.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're miserable as like as a dad or mom, like trying to put dinner on the table. It can be simple and nutritious and delicious. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to have all the bells and whistles. So like having something like pesto that you could slather on a chicken, that you could just mix some pasta with, it makes all the difference. Or a mojo. I love a mojo. Some tostones.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Talk about that. And then you have garlic croutons, which is talk about a salad dressing and making an easy salad. The croutons, wonderful to have those on hand. And these are the kinds of things, like you mentioned, that people could, if they don't want to do it during the weeknight, they could do it on the weekend. It just sets your whole pantry, refrigerator up for the week. Yeah.
They keep for a while, and like I'll crumble up those croutons and have them on my soft scrambled eggs, and it feels so luxurious. I tell you, it's like a little me moment in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go then. That's the whole chapter dedicated to that, which I think is a wonderful way to actually, have those things. And then we get into some of the different chapters. One of them is breakfast. Let's talk a little bit about breakfast and what your philosophy is about breakfast, in particular, feeding children maybe before they're going to school. What tips and tricks you have to make that a time of day where you can also be serving something that we've cooked to the family.
I never said I was going to do this, but I am a short order cook. I think parents always like, I'm going to serve what I serve and you're going to like it. But then you want your kids to be happy and it's like too much stress in the morning. So on a weekday morning, I will usually make what the kids want, which is sometimes they want an eggs over easy with toast, which they call white eggs. Sometimes it's a soft scramble. Sometimes it's a breakfast sandwich, whatever else. On the weekends, I like to make things a little bit more special. But just because you want to go the extra mile on the weekend doesn't mean that you all of a sudden magically have all this time and energy. So like for me, that could be prepping out like a frittata. Like a frittata is a great thing to have, especially if you're having people over, because you can like prep it all out the night before and bake it off ahead of time, or bake it off ahead of time and just heat it up. And you get all the benefits of having a fancy quiche, but you're just skipping the pastry, and it's so full of flavor and easy. The special treat that I have to mention, because it's like, it is, I think donuts is dessert, but it's a breakfast thing, are the pear fritters. Oh my gosh. That was like one of the humble looking showstoppers. It's just the balance of like those beautiful pears and a zingy, lemony icing with crisp golden batter. And really, when I make a fritter is fruit held together by a thin matrix of dough, which is fluffy on the inside and fried on the outside. And they were just so good. And like, if I wanted to make that and I knew I'm going to be, at half speed in the morning, I would just prep out the wet ingredients, pop it into the fridge in a bowl, have the dry ingredients on the counter ready to go. In the morning, I would like chop the pears up, combine it while the oil's heating, and it's good to go. And I'd have my coffee and read the news in the meantime.
Yes. Sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. You also have a chapter on snacks and small bites. Tell us a little bit about that, because I don't know that people would automatically think, well, gosh, if we're making things super easy, why would I want to prepare snacks or small bites?
Because your household runs on snacks. This is what
Yes.
nobody tells you. Your kids, they're like, their love song
They're
is
snack machines.
snacks. Like
Yes.
they actually don't want dinner or lunch usually. They want a series of delightful snacks to be paraded through the house. And I love making them happy, but I don't always want to like just serve. I don't like serving prepackaged food. Like I want to know what was inside of it. And like I want to have control over that. So this is an easy way of just like making something delicious that you can serve your family. And it doesn't have to be for a fancy get together or like you're having people over for cocktails. Your family's just hungry. like,
Yep.
like I like snacks too, so I'm not gonna look down on that.
Yep. And I mean, there's a little transition time in the afternoon around 3:30 to 4 o'clock when, days like kind of changing, people are getting hungry. Now people are like, well, it's probably the worst time of day to feed them a snack, but I promise it helps. I mean, it takes the edge off for everybody.
The
And
mood of the house elevates
yes,
instantly.
100%. Right. And I think that time of day is probably the one time of day where a snack is probably very, very helpful, gives them maybe something to do. It might even be something that they could finish or help with. So you have some snack mixes, you have some dips in there. Anything come to mind, or any tips that you want to share with the listeners about any of the recipes in that chapter?
I don't know. I kind of loved the Chex Mix that was in there just because it was like, I love Chex Mix, but I wanted to give a couple different iterations of it. And you can make a big batch and put it in Ziploc bags,
Yeah.
and it's good for a week or two. And it's such a lifesaver. Like the kids here's the deal. They're hungry, but children and adults have difficulty with transitions. So if you're transitioning from school time and it's like now you're at the house and you're going to start the homework and all that stuff, you need like a little moment to like for the pivot. And the snack is the moment for the pivot. So some crunchy, salty, sweet deliciousness. I'd serve it with some fruit slices and it's good to go.
Yeah. And it looked like I looked at that recipe. There was maybe 6 or 7 different variations for flavorings that you can put in the Chex Mix. I mean, it could be different every week for 2 months if you wanted to make that every week.
One of my main goals for the book, aside from everything being like very easy and quick, was for people to come back to a recipe and try it different ways. And I struggle with writing recipes because that's what I love. And some people love what I love. Like I love cardamom and lemon and things like that. But like that's not everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give the flexibility. So I often think of my recipes as like almost a blank canvas. Like this is how you can successfully make this dish. But there are so many different ways. Like maybe you want to swap a protein out. Maybe you want to bring a different dressing in. Maybe you want to have a different spice mix. Or like, you know what? I feel like muffins instead of a loaf today. So the book gives you tons of variations. And my goal was for the reader to really try things out, see what they like, and make the recipes their own. Because when something is your own, it's just like so much closer to your heart and you love it so much more.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. What about salads and side dishes? Some people would argue that the meal is made by the sides. I come from, Kentucky in the South. You go to barbecue. Barbecue's, the meat's important, but the side dishes are so fun to eat. So let's talk a little bit about the sides, because I think sometimes people that are cooking for families would be like, isn't it easier? You have a one pan meal chapter. Wouldn't it be easier for me to just do the one pan meals than the salads and the sides?
Life is not made by one pan meals alone, and
Right.
you want like you need a variety. You
Yes.
want a variety of textures. Maybe you want some cool things and some warm things, and they're like I love my one pan meals, but we want to have things that are different and also that you can mix and match as you please. Because maybe you have like a lovely recipe from a different book or from your grandmother that you have, and that is what you make, but you want to try it out with a different pasta or a different rice. Like right now it's summer, there's a summer rice salad in the book, and it is like I love a rice salad in the summer because when my oven's not going on, it's cool when it's a hot day, which I love. And it's really just like it's filling, but it's not heavy, and you can add so much flavor into it. Like the rice will absorb all that dressing, and the next day it's even better. And yes, those pickled onions are on there. Like the one of my main memories of like my Sunday dinners with my grandparents were Greek was like having a big leg of lamb or a big chicken. Like the lamb is like studded with garlic, and the chicken was like drenched in lemon juice and olive oil. But that would be served with like a nice salad and my favorite side, which is in the book, it's a spicy tomato orzo.
Mm.
And not gluey, but like silky. Oh, like is it a soup? I can't tell. It's like so much sauce and glossy and not at all clumped together. It's kind of a pain to make though. It's not hard. It just takes time. Like when you're making those saucy pastas, you're making sure like constantly stirring, things don't burn. So for that one, I like found a time-saving hack of using Bloody Mary mix as the base, which gives you that spicy tomato kickstart. And then you do some stovetop work, but it goes right into the oven and it bakes up perfectly. So you don't have to
No,
stand over.
no standing and stirring.
No, which is like my least favorite part.
Yeah. Sounds wonderful. Yeah. So that's good. Sounds good. Any, we got rice salad, the spicy tomato orzo. Um, what about green salads? What's your philosophy about, other than having the salad dressing on hand, anything for green salads?
I mean, so personal. Don't feel like you have to have like a leafy green.
Yeah.
You could have you could have shaved Brussels sprouts. You could have cabbage. You could have like lots of crunchy, massy things. You could have, um, you know, shaped carrots. Like the list goes on. It doesn't have to be this like light, leafy salad because if you're very busy, chances are you shopped with good intentions.
Yeah.
And those greens looked so nice when you bought them, but when you finally get around to it, you're going to open it up. And, the only thing I have two pet peeves I'm going to share with you. One is burnt eggs. It is a trigger for me. I cannot handle it. And two would be like the wilted,
Yeah.
muddy greens. I can't eat a salad for so long if I see that. It's like weeks before I can look at that kind of salad again. So don't feel like you're married to having, a gem lettuce or arugula or something like that. There's so many different varieties.
And I think you also bring up a good point then about cooking and preparing meals, that sometimes, even though these ingredients look really good at the supermarket or the farmer's market, we do have to be realistic about the time that we have, because I think produce waste weighs on it weighs on us. You know what I mean? So I think heartier things do stay longer in the produce drawer, and they're easier to deal with 5 days later than, if you can't get to it.
Yeah.
So it's also an act of kindness, I think, for yourself as a cook to Maybe if you're going to get something, you probably have to use it sooner rather than later. And relying on some of those other things, chopped green cabbage, chopped red cabbage, like you said, the shredded carrot, shredded Brussels sprouts, excellent. And if you have your dressings on hand, like you talk about, you're really just a mix away from chopping them up. And
So fast.
yes,
I like to add some some like sliced almonds in there for some more texture, and you just go for there. But it's really, what flavors do I want?
hmm
And have intentions, firm intentions when you buy something. So if I was at the store and I saw beautiful nectarines, okay, like I'm gonna grab some basil from my garden or from the store. I'm gonna grab some burrata or fresh mozzarella and have like a nectarine caprese and be very happy, because like that's the easiest thing you could make. It's just slicing it up and a drizzle here and there.
yeah. And you talk about fresh ingredients doing the heavy lifting for you. It doesn't take a lot to do that. And I think that's one of the things that you really feel like helps to elevate your meals.
Yeah, if your flavors are coming through really clearly from the ingredients, that is like 90% of the work. And my mom is from Mexico, and she grew up in a very small village. Like when I visited as a child, there was one phone at the bank, period. It's different now, very different now. But like it was a different time and place. And the canned ingredients, all the pre-prepared foods did not exist. So everything was made from scratch. She really taught me to start with the beautiful ingredients and to let those shine through. Her philosophy, which was imparted onto me, is like, you want what you're using to be the star. So you're not going to drown it in butter and salt and everything else and like overcook it. Like let it come through, let it be light and bright.
Yep. And that, unless you're making something that's a complicated layered dish, like you said, the nectarines and the fresh mozzarella and the basil, it's just
How can you beat that?
right, right. Just a matter of chopping them up, and it's beautiful, and it shows some intention. And I think all those ingredients enjoyed by a lot of different people, a lot of different ages, and really fun side dish to make. All right, so that leaves in the savory category our main dishes and our one pan meals. So why don't you talk a little bit about these two categories? And one of the things that I read in the introduction and that we talked about was your use in talking about helping people to use air fryers, the instant pot, and a slow cooker. And your philosophy and theory about using those for the main meal.
I am all for a time-saving gadget, and I don't think you should be prescriptive and say like this has to be done this way, because like, there's I taught math and there's multiple algorithms to get to the same answer. So like I have a chicken parm in the book, and I have two air fryers in my kitchen. Like they're under the counter, so you can't see them now. But if I'm air frying something, I'm working both of those baskets. I'm like getting through it. So of course I'm going to have an air fryer version of that. But if you don't have one or you don't feel like it, use your oven. And like there's an oven version as well. It's the same recipe, just have different methods for the cooking. And you know, does every recipe lend itself to an air fryer? I would say no, but some people think yes. But wherever it's possible and you'll get a good result, I made sure to say, hey, if you have this, let's do that. It kind of adds to the length of the recipe, but I thought it was so worthwhile because one of the main questions I get for a recipe is like, oh, if I'm using this gadget, what is the cook time become and the temperature? And like people want to know. So I wanted to honor that intention.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the Instant Pot or the slow cooker, you offer those kinds of alternatives as well. If you can do it in a Dutch oven or your slow cooker, you have that in there. And I think also the other way that this works is not just choosing it, but on different times of the year or different nights, different things going on in your life, you may choose to use one vessel normally, but then maybe you have something going on or you really want to let it cook in the slow cooker. To have that alternative
Yeah,
for the very same recipe is wonderful.
you made some apple butter the day before and you don't want to put the slow cooker in the basement.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I can use it today again. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's like that's how life actually is. It's like what's in front of my eyes? Let me use this.
Yes. Yes. And I think that there are several dishes, and like you said, things that people can learn how to make, learn how to season, and then this even lends itself to different vessels to cook it in.
Yes.
Any tips for if people like go from a Dutch oven to the slow cooker, things that you've noticed in your testing and with the work that you do to really get good results in a
The
slow cooker?
time is going to be changing.
Yeah.
And, one thing I would just say as a general note for pots and pans, because so many people have felt sabotaged. Like, raise your hand if you've been victimized by this. But if you have a really heavy pot or Dutch oven, it's going to just conduct the heat really beautifully. And you have to do less. If you have like one of those thin, like the bottom is thick, but the walls are paper thin, oh my gosh, you're going to be dealing with scorching and you're like wiping and like, what did I do wrong? And like adjusting the oven. So just having the right tool really makes a difference. The slow cookers are so much easier. You're usually just adding a bunch of extra time from the Dutch oven.
Yeah. I kind of feel like cast iron Dutch ovens are having a moment though,
They
in
are. Oh my
terms
God.
of like when I look at like even the Amazon Prime deals, and I just got a email today from Sur La Table, and it's like all their Le Creuset and all their all clad, and it was the enameled cast iron equipment that they were actually promoting and talking about.
It's because it lasts forever. My mom got her some, beautiful things in the 70s for her wedding.
Yeah,
And she keeps using them because they will just last and last, unlike a lot of the non-stick stuff, which
yeah,
is just a waste.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's plus it's I think well it's kind of like almost the end. We're in August and fall is coming in the
I know.
in the four season world, and people are starting to think about these
You've
things.
you've seen a couple like pumpkin spice things like,
Yes. Oh
oh, that's
no.
pumpkins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went to TJ Maxx the other day to buy. I always buy my flower pots there, and there it was, Halloween stuff right in the Halloween aisle. Okay, so what about one pan meals? What do these mean to you, and how can that help people to have these simple foods that feel special?
Like the cover is a one pan meal. I made this last week. It is something where I like one pan meals because they have less cleanup. Clearly, there's less of me searching around for like the right thing to use. Like I have my one cast iron pan that I use constantly, so it looks like a disaster, but it's the best thing ever.
Mhm.
And it just like it kind of centers you in the kitchen, so you're not going from place to place, from burner to burner. You're right there. Yeah, you're going to transfer some things away to take them off heat. Like you cook the chicken in there, chicken comes off heat. Then you add in your wine and your stock and your pasta and lemon juice and all that, and then stir the ricotta in. But it's all right there, and it's just it simplifies the space in a way that makes cooking much easier.
Any favorite recipes in that chapter that you'd like to? The one on the cover it looks like a spiral pasta, chicken, and ricotta cheese, and
Yeah,
tomatoes.
tomatoes, squash,
Yep.
and there's a lot of like onion and garlic
Yep.
mixed in there. The sauce is white wine,
Mhm.
chicken stock, and then there's some ricotta stirred in, so it has like a nice creaminess to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah,
I
sounds
love lemony things, so that actually is one of my favorites. That's why it's on the cover.
you get to talk about it. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. Now, I know baking is also something you love to do, and cookies, bar cookies. You have cakes, quick breads. Let's talk a little bit about this whole concept of the specialness of home baked things and your argument for doing it at home versus letting your supermarket or Costco or someone else do it for you.
Well, it's always better when you make it at home. Like unless you're going to a very expensive, fancy bakery where it's like it's not always better for my wallet. But in general, like what you make at home is so much better, in part because you tailor it for you. Do I want like a little extra flourish of flaked salt on top? Yes, I do. And it'll be there when I make it. And it's so much fresher too. So something right out of the oven is magical. Like
Yeah.
all these butter-based desserts you really need to enjoy them fresh or at room temperature. So if something's been sitting out for a while and refrigerated, like the texture is different, it's just not the same. And then there's the whole point of making it. So I love like both of my sons are not equally into kitchen time, but one of them is like right by my side, watching everything, wants to help stir. And, it's such a nice bonding moment. It's so
Oh, yeah.
difficult to be present with your family when there's all these distractions and everyone is so busy and so scheduled and productivity has to be high. But in the kitchen, when we are making something, you have to be mindful and it's tactile and it's like a lovely time to come together. So I love that aspect of it and it just tastes better and it's
Yeah.
cheaper. So
Yeah.
it's like
I think it's sweet. One of your sons, you said, is right there when you're preparing the food. I bet the other one is probably there when you're eating it, or there's things that he wants to
yes,
eat that are there.
he likes helping, but it's not every single step. He
Yes.
likes
Yeah.
to poke his head in and do a
Yeah.
check.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of you also your philosophy of learn the recipe but have variations also shows up in the baking chapter. In the chocolate ganache cupcakes, you have variations for adding spices, a filling, making it a cake, or making it a mini sheet cake.
There's so many. I make that recipe all of the time because I get a lot of last moment requests for like, oh, could you bring a dessert? I'm like, yes, I would love to. But what can I make that'll be a hit and is really easy? And cupcakes aren't hard. Cake
Yeah.
isn't hard. But I learned this from my mother, and it's like a more European way of making desserts. Is like instead of using a buttercream, just pouring a ganache over it gives you that richness, the gloss, the shine. It seals in the freshness. And it's so simple. It's so easy. It's like a total cheat. It's like it
And,
shouldn't be this easy, but it
and
is.
you
So
talk about elevating and making something look wonderful. People think that they would think you bought that at a bakery.
it looks so fancy. It's
Yes.
ridiculous. Like I
Yes.
brought them and people were like, oh my gosh, is that for
Yes.
eating? And I was like, yes, you just dip them upside down and take them out.
Yeah.
But it comes out perfect. So I love the way it tastes. And yeah, I wanted to give different variations for the ways that you could make the cupcakes different or special or just play with the recipe and have fun with it.
Yeah. So I like that you're doing that for the desserts as well. Cookies, of course, I have a personal passion for like little delicious cookies. I think it's one of the most amazing things to make. I love Christmas time because of cookies, and you have a lot of really good cookie recipes here. And I think those probably would fit. It's kind of like seems old fashioned, but fill that little gap between school and dinner time. Families with children know if there's fresh cookies on the counter, it's never a bad way to make the transition.
No, and there's something so I don't know, like the way a child's eyes will light up
It's
when he gives
wonderful.
them
Yep.
a
Yep.
freshly baked cookie or when they help make it. It's just it's very
Yeah.
special. So it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. I think so too. So I think we've covered the contents of the book, but I want you to like have a minute here to, if there's something else that we haven't talked about, anything that you want people to know about this book, Preppy Kitchen Super Easy, um, that you hope really, convinces someone to dive in and really think about maybe cooking for your family in a different way.
Well, I really hope that people will pick the book up, give it a try at the bookstore, or just order it for Amazon because inside it's just easy, delicious recipes. And it's difficult on a podcast because we're talking about things and we're both excited, but you can't see the recipes. Every recipe has a photo. And like right now, I'm looking at the Mexican hot chocolate brownies that have these like these bruleed marshmallows melting on top, and the tops are glossy and crackly, and they're so fudgy and easy and simple to make. Like, how could you say no to a homemade brownie that only took you a few minutes to make?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
for sure. And the
so,
book's available for people to order now.
yeah, you can order it right now. It comes out August 20th, and I'll be going on book tour. So, if anyone can make it, I hope to see all of you there.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing for your book tour and places where you're going to be going. The audience that I have here have gathered is from all over the U.S. and outside the U.S. But where in the U.S. will you be going?
Starting off in New York, and I'll be going to Dallas, to Los Angeles, Seattle, Chicago, and Atlanta.
And there's a place where they can check the dates on a
Yeah, and
website, or yeah.
all the dates are on my website, preppykitchen.com, and they're ticketed events. So grab a ticket, and I hope to see you there.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Hope that some of the people that are listening can make that and enjoy meeting you in person and learning all about the work that you're doing with your Preppy Kitchen. But as we're wrapping up, something I like to ask my guest is, since we're a podcast all about cookbooks, is if there is a cookbook that has influenced you or one that you turn to or have turned to in your life over and over again.
Okay, this is a difficult question because I have to ask my mom, but so my mom had a ton of cookbooks.
Yes.
There's two I'm going to mention. One
Yes.
is our family scrapbook because my grandmother gave it to her, and it had all the handwritten recipes as well as the yellowed clipped articles with notes from my grandmother and my mother. And that is like, I can picture it. And it's like if you had a fire, it's like one of the things I would grab from the house.
Yes.
But the other one is an out of print 1970s compilation.
That's good.
I think it's from Bon Appetit, and it was like basically an encyclopedia of everything food. They had a cocktails book, and if you're talking about terrines, everything was from scratch. So they would say, go to your butcher and buy the cow hooves, boil them, blah blah blah, to make the gelatin, and it went on from there. And as a child, and it was illustrated, I would go through that book, every book page by page. It was fascinating just because everything was like from the beginning to the end. How do you make this? And there's a lot of like very odd 1970s cocktail party and dinner party ideas of like, things in Jell-O and in like mayonnaise sauces as well, by decorations. But those are my two books. I'm sorry that they're...
That's fine. No, that's great. It's possible. Sometimes I have it happen where people that are listening, actually, they wouldn't have your family scrapbook.
Yeah.
But if people are collectors, they might have this set of the Bon Appetit from the 1970s, and they'll know exactly what you're talking about. I usually try to find it also online. Sometimes Abe Books and places that have used cookbooks for sale, you can find these things. Kitchen Arts and Letters in New York sometimes has them, so I'll link to those. I think it's just fun because it's not. I haven't ever had a cookbook author say, "Oh, there isn't anything that like influenced me." I think everybody's roots in cookbook writing and cooking. Even when you were a math and science teacher, obviously there were things even before that you remembered being around and being exposed to, and it's just always really fun to see. Wow, cooking's come a long way since the 1970s, though. I mean, we're not that we're not making terrines and cocktails, but just in terms of like what we've talked about today on the show with your cookbook, Preppy Kitchen Super Easy, and then what the 1970s represented, just a big, evolution in the kitchen.
Things are changing.
Yes, that's for sure. Well, I'd like for you to also tell everybody again how they can connect with you online. You mentioned then go to the Preppy Kitchen website for the dates for your book tour events, but any other way where they can connect with you and where they can find a lot of your content in particular.
On Instagram and TikTok, I'm Preppy Kitchen, and on YouTube, Preppy Kitchen as well. And then on the web, preppykitchen.com. So it's fairly simple. Great.
So all across the board for all the different channels. Well, I wish you nothing but the best with your new book. It's a beautiful book. It's been great to talk about it. You've inspired me to do some things for stocking my pantry with some delicious things to have on hand to make meals easier. And that's something that we all certainly need. And greatly appreciate your time and enjoy your promotion, meeting all the people, and have a great fall and school season. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Maggie. It was a delightful conversation. And I hope to see you soon.
I hope to see you soon too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love Podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green, and until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love Podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.